Episode 7 of The Messenger, the Rachel cancer scam. Previously on The Messenger, Rachel and I wondered and worried about her cancer together. We learned that Rachel was never a nurse at all, just a certified nursing assistant that liked to keep a nurse badge on her person. And I also shared that voicemail from Billy Bush, the first real red flag in all of this. And I'll explain that in a minute. Back to the cancer scam. Rachel would choose to take a cancer treatment in the form of a pill, which would keep our baby safe. She would take that pill while on a girls' trip with her daughters to Mexico. The trip actually lasted only 1 week. Brace yourself for some lies, some more lies. She claimed initially that the trip would be 17 or 18 days. She also claimed to be sick the entire time from pregnancy and from the chemo. Spent the entire trip in the bathroom, sick. Bathroom, floor, blanket, pillow, just so sick. Imagine morning sickness and chemo at the same time. I heard from her rarely. She was kind enough to send me a picture, though. It was taken in the bathroom. A profile showing what was supposed to be a baby bump. Her pretending she was pregnant. And she would say things to me like, "I miss you so much, and I have a piece of you inside of me. It's our baby. It's with me everywhere I go. It makes me feel close to you." Much happened on this Mexico trip. At one point, she claimed to begin suffering serious abdominal pains which were troubling for both of us. There's something about throwing up. It's probably the most violent act that our bodies do. I remember being sick a few years before this all happened, a bad stomach flu, and I remember throwing up for a day and a half, and thinking to myself, just punch me in the face instead of this. Not being able to control something like that, literally feeling your stomach say, guess what? We're not having it. And sending everything up through your mouth and your nose in the most violent and expedient fashion possible. It's awful. But, I'm also a man, and we get man sick, as they say. We tend to complain a lot. Anyway, I worried about all the vomiting and the potential impact on the baby. She also claimed to have contracted COVID while in Mexico. She was put in quarantine, claimed that 3 of the 4 daughters would fly home separately, and she and her youngest would stay back until they were cleared. At this point, I was in a full-on panic. My girl was sick from chemo, sick from COVID, and sick from pregnancy, and now she's stuck in Mexico. At the end of the last episode, I played you a voicemail. This voicemail.
H. Bushy. I spoke to my guy. Something's weird, Al. I'm being told that she checked out. Not there. Anyway, call me.
Bushy is Billy Bush. Yeah, that Billy Bush. Extra, Access Hollywood. The Today Show. That guy. And during this time, he and I would talk often. Billy and I have been friends for 30 years. He was part of my inner circle. And as you can imagine, when something needs to happen, get a guy like Billy Bush, he's a guy you want in your corner. And this proved to be no exception. This part of the story is where it gets a little complicated, and a huge lie is uncovered. That voicemail that Bushy left me was in response to a call that I made to him, telling him about Rachel's predicament at the moment. She was stuck at Moon Palace in Cancun. Claimed that they wouldn't let her go because of COVID. She wouldn't be allowed back in the U.S. Billy would later tell me that he called one of the 2 owners of the resort. He is friendly with both of them. And she said that Rachel had checked out 2 weeks prior, according to them. It seemed unfathomable to me that she would do this. And I said, let me call you back. I texted her immediately and I said, Billy can get you out, but the owners are saying you're not there. She claimed that the resort put her in some special group of rooms for COVID patients. As it would turn out, Rachel never had COVID. She came home on schedule and was never sick. That was around the 27th of January in 2022. And one other bit of information, and this is important. Rachel was setting me up at one point for an issue with the pregnancy, as I indicated, with all that vomiting. This is when she started to complain of those abdominal pains that I thought were related to chemo or morning sickness. She pretended to be worried one day and called for a doctor. The doctor brought in a portable Doppler unit to do an ultrasound. When the doctor left, Rachel sent me a message about the baby. And it wasn't good news. There was no heartbeat. You knew this was coming. And just like that, our baby was gone. All she could do was wait for the baby to pass. Rachel was still very sick with chemo. And now, everything that accompanies a miscarriage. I'm not sure, but I think about a day later it happened. It happened at night. Rachel claimed to have passed the baby. She said the baby was so tiny. It was a girl. She claimed that she cleaned her off and held her, cried all night. She claimed that the next morning she brought this baby wrapped in a towel to the hospital and had her cremated. And then she claimed to have passed her COVID tests within a few days of that. On February 12th, she booked a flight home to arrive on February 14th. Upon her return, she brought those ashes to me, and I'd written a few words. Together, we put our baby's ashes in an urn. I still have that urn. And as I stare at it, I wonder, why do I still have this? Who do these ashes belong to, or what do they belong to? Did she burn a manila envelope in her fireplace and deliver those ashes to me in that envelope? What sort of evil does it take to manufacture that situation? And why do I still have this? Anyway, she finally returned. And as far as I was concerned, on February 14th, was back in the United States for the first time in over a month. And we had planned to see each other on the 15th, after she dropped her kids at school. I had planned to ask for her hand in marriage. I picked out a ring, wrote and rehearsed a proposal, put on a suit, dropped to my knee. I did what I never thought I would do again. I asked a woman for her hand in marriage. An important fact in my story, that's during this entire time from the beginning of the cancer scam, I was staying at a hotel in Atascadero for months. Yeah, I moved 7 hours away from my home and my business because I wanted to be there at a moment's notice in case she or the baby needed anything. She had cancer. She needed my support, and I knew what I had to do. I put my entire life on pause for her. I paid someone to stay at my house and care for my dog. I uprooted my life completely. Most people probably would have stayed put and been ready at a moment's notice to jump on a plane in the event of an emergency. Not me. That wasn't good enough. I moved to California. I wasn't in 100%. I was in 1,000%. That right there is the level of buy-in that I had. Maybe someone else would have seen the signs. Signs which I may have seen, but I chose to ignore. Love is blind. She'd been home for weeks. She had spent Valentine's Day with her husband, Mark, and came to see me the next day. I was holed up in the hotel the entire time, waiting for her. I could walk to her house from the hotel. Here's something that's another little tidbit of information for you. She left for that trip in Mexico around January 18th, and I returned to Vegas for what I thought would be a week and a half. A couple days later, I received a package from her, and it contained a note. Well, it contained handwritten notes, like 30 of them, on colored cards. The envelope and the letters smelled of her perfume. You know how you girls can do, make it all pretty and smelling good. A handwritten note for each day and a group of what she referred to as emergency notes in case I couldn't make it to the next day. The emergency notes were titled, "Open when you need to know how I really love you," or "Open when you need to know that you're needed," "Open when you really miss me," and so on and so forth. Who does that? I've never been with a woman that loved me like that, ever. I had never really given my heart to anyone. When the trip got extended, she claims that she wrote me a group of additional notes, sent them home with Madison, and had her mail them to me from Atascadero. These notes, by the way, I still have them. just like the urn. Why do I still have them? I suppose at this point it's evidence. It's something for you to see. I spread them all over my kitchen table, put them in order day by day. My kitchen smelled of Rachel for 2 weeks. And I was a victim of a love bomb. A couple of them, actually. Emotional terrorism, as it would turn out. Enough of that for now. Small town crime can be horrific. Some of the darkest stories, the most chilling and heinous murders happen where you least expect it. In small towns, these crimes often get overlooked, but not on True Crime Cast, where these cases are put in the spotlight. Join hosts Jamie and John every week as they uncover chilling cases from notorious murders that shook the world to small town mysteries that have flown under the radar until now. Get ready for gripping storytelling, spine-tingling details, and cases you've yet to hear about. True Crime Cast, wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by Stoveleg Media. I think it's only right that at this point we update the murder scorecard. Let's face it, we have another murder to report. So far, here are the people that Rachel has killed off in this story. Her sister Sherry. False. This is a lie. She's very much among the living. Someone I actually have a relationship with now. Her husband Bobby. False. Alive and well, living in parts unknown somewhere in Texas. Bobby's father, Robert Sr., and Rebecca, his mom. It remains unverified if they're actually his parents or still alive. I've nominated them as most likely to be fake all around. Remember, Bobby wasn't a husband, he was just a side piece. Rachel's friend Stephanie, who killed herself after she found her husband cheating on her. Rachel's client Samantha, who was murdered by her brother. And now, we can add our baby to that list. Our murder total is 7. 7 Rachel murders, not real murders. At this point, Rachel has tied her peer in the hooker business, Eileen Warnos, the famous hooker/murderer who killed 7 of her Johns in a crazy violent fashion. The day after our engagement, she went to her oncologist. She got tested to see if the chemo pill she had taken in Mexico had helped. The first round didn't work. Her cancer was stage 2 and growing. He indicated they needed to start more treatment. The cancer was aggressive, and we were scared. Well, I was scared. She knew that she didn't have cancer, obviously. She would tell me how hesitant she was to go through chemo again. Didn't want to be sick. She was drained from the awful hand that life had dealt her. She had just lost our baby and was so sick from the first round of chemo. She said that she had been through it before and she just wanted to give up. Didn't want to lose her hair, didn't want to be sick. Didn't want to let things take their course. And above all else, she would say that she just didn't have any fight left in her after the hand that life had dealt her. Life was one gut punch after another, in her mind. Rachel wouldn't take treatment until May, as it would turn out. Now, here's where another big lie in a story filled with lies comes in. A story that's littered with lies, if you will. She claimed that while I was in California living next door to her at that hotel, that there was a CPS investigation involving her youngest daughter, one that I will not speak of because of the sensitivity of the subject matter. But she claimed that she was told by CPS that she would have to be by her daughter's side the entire time that this investigation was happening. One more hospitalization, one more attempt at suicide by her daughter, or one more event of any kind would lead to her being removed from the home. Remember, this was the daughter who had taken a bunch of pills in November, the week of Thanksgiving. Back to episode 2. She said that according to CPS, she had to be with her at all times, literally attached at the hip, to make sure that she was okay. I finally left the Atascadero and headed back to Vegas at one point after she agreed that she would take treatment in the near future. When I came home to Vegas, it was strange. I felt like I was never home, never at home. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I was waiting for a call, waiting for a message, waiting for the opportunity to come back, to be by her side. We had gone from the end of January to now May with no chemo. When I got here, I sat most days avoiding calls from friends and family members. I sat and I worked. I ran my business. I ran my other business, which was the virtual emotional caregiver business. And when I wasn't working, we were talking incessantly. She would text and I would send a video, just on the phone incessantly. The phone had become our lifeline. My friends initially would push back and push to get me out of the house. It was like trying to talk to a rock, though, I suppose. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And when I went out and I'd leave the house for something, I had the phone with me at all times. For the 18-month stay, her stay, I was stoic. I was buried in my phone and not fun to be around. I walked into a room and I could just suck the energy right out of it like a fucking magic trick. There's a line in a Bob Dylan song called Positively 4th Street, which I love. And it's so fitting. It's like the greatest F.U. in a song ever written. He says, I wish for just one time you could stand inside my shoes. And for just that one moment, I could be you. And you'd know what a drag it is to see you. It's so fitting. In my life, if my friends and people that cared about me could play a song at that time in my life, I had some sort of walkout music, it would surely be that song. That was what I had become. I could walk into a room and instantly suck the energy right out of it. And because I'm a large and imposing man with a big voice, apparently I have a really serious resting bitch face. It's a vicious 1-2 combination, which did me no favors in my life with anyone, ever. There was no need for it. But I didn't know how to deal with it otherwise. I was unhappy. I was lonely. I was pissed off at God. Let's face it, at this point, I had no idea I was being scammed. I had no idea I had fallen for maybe one of the greatest female con artists of our time. Certainly of my time. I ruined relationships. I poisoned myself on people. I had a core group of guys that stood by me, but I wasn't easy. I know that. I was the exact opposite of easy. I'll address that more soon. But my friends did nothing but love me and care about me, and I rejected and alienated all of them, systematically. My behavior caused people to just not want to be around me. More on that in another episode, I suppose. For now, let's get back to cancer. My late father once said to me about Rachel's cancer, her lack of desire to get chemo, to look for a holistic approach for curing herself, was a mistake. He said, Harry, the patient's opinion has no opinion in the doctor's office when it comes to cancer. If the patient wants to live, you need to get her to take treatment now or you're going to lose her. My father was smart, maybe the smartest person I've ever known, and I knew he was right. And my dad plays a role in this story and is a part of what Rachel did. And that story is going to horrify you, I suspect. I think I'll be ready to share it with you in another couple episodes, I hope. I will tell you that my father was a pathologist and he found his own cancer and he beat what was a sure death sentence with the type of cancer he got in 1990. I will share at least a part of that story. I begged and pleaded with Rachel during February, March, and April of 2022 to take treatment. It seemed like my words were falling on deaf ears. And now I'm going to fast forward to May of 2022. At this point, Rachel is now stage 4, and she's agreed to take treatment. But apparently there's some sort of requirement for her to see a grief counselor for end-of-life planning before starting that treatment when you're stage 4. This included funeral arrangements, her final wishes, letters to those of us she loved. She claimed that it was awful, and I didn't need her to tell me that. Awful is all I felt at this point in time. I couldn't believe for a second that this was happening. How could this be happening to us? Chemo was scheduled to begin on May 5th, 2022, and I was able to see her the night before. I flew to Santa Barbara to meet her. Same deal. Hotel Santa Barbara, room 217. And as it turns out, this visit on May 4th and May 5th would be our last visit. This, as it turns out, would be the last time I would ever see Rachel face to face. On the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel cancer scam, our last night together, doxorubicin, the Red Devil, and a trip to the hospital by ambulance, where you go and you never get to leave. Next time on the Rachel Cancer Scam.